spotlighting alumni who have taken on social issues in their work in a variety of ways. And I'm so proud of the people that are going to be speak. I just can't wait to hear you. And I'm really proud of our moderator, who I've known a long time. I knew him as a freshman, and he did his first startup here at RISD, the basketball team. But Joe Gebbia, class of 2005, graduated with a dual major in graphic design and industrial design, and I think many of you know the name. Joe Gebbia is the co-founder with Brian Chesky, another RISD alum, of Airbnb. Some of you may be taking use of Airbnb as we speak while you're here visiting. And how many people here are staying in an Airbnb? All right, yay. Joe is blushing. Anyway, I think you know the story. It started in a San Francisco apartment and spread to nearly 5 million listings in more than 191 countries, which is pretty much across the globe. And Joe is involved in crafting the company culture, something which I think perhaps had some sources in his experience here, because he was very active as a student at RISD, president of the Student Alliance, started the basketball team. And all of that helped him to become this incredible innovator who is innovating future growth opportunities, dedicating company resources to social impact. And I'm really proud to hear Joe, every time I see him, there's a new project that he's working on to bring good into the world and to really take the idea of welcome and hosting and caring across the globe in all different ways, not just in Airbnb properties. Through this program, hosts have already offered temporary housing to over 20,000 people who needed to leave their home because of disasters, conflict, or illness. That's worth some applause, I think. And in addition to serving on our board of trustees, Joe also serves on the leadership council of the Malala Fund, the organization founded by Malala Yousafzai, who champions education for young women around the world. Please join me in welcoming Joe Gebbia.
Thank you, Roseanne, for that really warm welcome. It's so fun to be back on campus, and thank you for all the hands that went up, for all the folks staying on our service tonight or last night. I'm super excited about this. Welcome to Alumni Shorts. This is an annual event that follows the President's update to hear from alumni who are doing exceptional things in the world. And by all cases today, we do have 3 exceptional alums to hear from. Last year's was on the topic of pivot. This year's is on the topic of social entrepreneurship, which I think is so timely for a number of reasons. I think Roseanne touched on the strategic plan for RISD going forward 2020 to 2027 is covering just society, sustainability, and new ways of making and knowing. And I think today we're really going to see these come to life through the stories of alums and what they're doing out in the world. And before I introduce them, I'll just frame this real quick with a story of that really changed me here at RISD. It was in the industrial design department. It must have been the year 2002. They took all the sophomore class to the Rhode Island State landfill. And who's been to a landfill before? Way more people than I thought. Just put their hand up. It's an experience you will never forget. I remember standing there with my classmates thinking, wow, this is a lot of trash. As far as you could see into the distance of Rhode Island was just trash. And I'm thinking, industrial design is about making stuff. Why are we making stuff to make a landfill bigger? And it was this moment that I will never forget. It put me on a different course in life to really think very practically about the consequences of the things that we make as designers. I certainly didn't want my legacy to be making a landfill bigger. So you can kind of connect the dots with our service today. It's not about making stuff, it's about repurposing the things that we already have and going beyond that, as Roseanne mentioned, using our business to actually do good in the world and take the platform to house people in the greatest need. So there's 3 people that I'm really excited for you to meet. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. Expect a huge applause for all of them. Our first panelist is originally from Seal, Alabama. He received his BFA in graphic design in 2013. He began his design career at Gray Advertising in New York before moving on to work with such clients as HBO, Nickelodeon, the Public Theater, and the Whitney Museum. As an educator, he's taught at Micah, Parsons, the American University in Beirut, and Cooper Union. He is the co-founder and design director at Codify Art. It's a multidisciplinary collective dedicated to creating, producing, supporting, and showcasing work of arts by artists of color, particularly women, queer, and trans artists. He's currently a partner and co-founder of Morcos Key, a Brooklyn-based design studio that focuses on visual identities and print design systems for arts and cultural institutions. Please join me in welcoming Jon Key. Excellent, Jon. The woman you're about to meet is the founder and CEO of Haram Foundation, which this 2001 architecture alumni is a Syrian American architect and writer from Aleppo. Her nonprofit is building a better future for displaced Syrian youth through innovative education and leadership programs. She often travels to the Syrian border in southern Turkey to work with Syrian refugees. She was named one of Good Magazine's 2016 Good 100. She's been published in the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, Politico, and many more. She's a TEDx speaker. She's been on CNN, NBC News, BBC, NPR, and seems like every other media outlet that's out there. She currently serves as the chair of the board of directors of the Syria campaign and is a visiting fellow with the Muslim Diaspora Initiative at New America. I'm very pleased to introduce Lina, Sergie, Attar. The third panelist and the man you're about to meet is a photographer and sculptor whose bodies of work have most often explored life in urban neighborhoods, environment, and cultural issues. His accomplishments include co-founding the AS220 Community Darkroom and teaching youth from predominantly underserved communities. In addition to freelance photography and teaching, he is currently producing a gun violence prevention public art project titled One Gun Gone. He was a photography major from the class of 1990. Please join me in a warm welcome for Scott Lapham. Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for being here to share your stories with us. Jon, we're going to start with you. You're from Alabama. Where does your story begin?
Awesome. Testing, 1, 2. Hi, how's it going? How is everyone? It's so nice to see such a packed room on an early morning. Hi, I am Jon Key. I'm originally from Alabama, like we talked about, and I'm a graphic designer, educator, and an artist. My story starts in Alabama. That's where I'm from, and I think, like many of us, my love and passion for art began when I was a child, when I was a kid. And I really owe my mom for making a craft table when we were really young and encouraging us to paint and use glitter and to explore and to play. And I think from that, kind of our passion, I also have a twin, Jared, who's also here, but our passion also kind of went from the craft table into music and doing recorders and doing theater and doing musical theater and singing and all of that in church and pageants. And I think all of those passions for art led me to RISD and led me to, you know, my passion for painting and graphic design, which is what I do a lot of today. So when I came to RISD, I think I was really excited about, you know, exploring and pushing and learning and gaining all these new skills. And I think RISD is such a beautiful campus. It has such a large community, but also there's Brown University. So I could also continue my passion for music and theater and all of that as well. And kind of still exploring, like, what does it mean to kind of work in these arts and cultural spaces, but also use my skills as a designer to make work. And one of the things that I think also kind of happened as I was here at RISD was really figuring out and questioning, what does it mean to be a graphic designer? What does it mean to use my skills as a designer to kind of have an impact on the world? How does my blackness affect my graphic design? How does my queerness affect my graphic design? Does that affect the kind of work that I want to do? How does that show up in the world and how I actually navigate it? So from that, you know, I graduated RISD, moved to New York like a bunch of people normally do, which is great always. And like you said, I worked at Gray, I worked at HBO, I worked at a whole bunch of kind of, you know, big creative agencies, but I knew at a very young age that I wanted to run my own business, and I wanted to prioritize trying to use my skills as a designer to amplify other marginalized voices. And so in 2015 was when a group of my friends who I went to Brown University with, Leandra Zanetti, Serena Gordon, Sun Kit, Joe Key, we all banded together and started Codify Art. And Codify Art, like you said at the beginning, is an arts collective that emphasizes elevating, supporting, showcasing, and curating work by artists of color, specifically people of color, women of color, trans artists of color, and queer artists of color. And so what that really looked like for us was doing open mic nights, doing networking events, doing gallery shows, being a part of Spring Break Art Fair, but also doing workshops at the Whitney and at Yale, and really figuring out ways that we can not only showcase these kind of diverse set of artists, but also advocate for them in these institutional spaces and bring them into the space. And so right now, our most recent project that Codify is doing that we're really excited about, it's been a couple years in the making, is an art drive. And so we're working with a new organization called New Alternatives, which is the LGBTQ homeless center. And they work with 15 to 24-year-olds, and they provide housing, they provide food services, they provide career services, and they do a lot of workshops with people in the community. So Codify has partnered with the Public Theater, we've partnered with the Brooklyn Museum, we've partnered with Brick in Brooklyn, and we're gonna have drop-off locations so community members can come in and bring supplies that we would then take to New Alternatives and do workshops and really allow them to figure out ways to express themselves and share their narratives through this art making. And so we're super excited about that. I think that's kind of a huge thing for Codify. And I think similarly, as a graphic designer, I, get to use my skills as a designer to work for amazing clients, to tell other people's stories and to tell kind of large institutional stories. So as a graphic designer, I founded Morcos Key in 2017 with my partner, Morcos, who also is a RISD alum, and he's originally from Lebanon. And so we started that 2017 and really thinking about how can we use our design skills to really work in the arts and cultural institution space? How can we use our design skills to really kind of elevate and amplify, our communities that we find are marginalized and don't necessarily get their stories as clearly shared as we would hope. And so our clients have ranged from working with the Studio Museum in Harlem, working for MTV, working for, the list can go on, MoMA and all of these things. But, one of my favorite projects that we did, and was actually one of the first projects that is kind of our own ongoing client, is the 10th Magazine. And so the 10th Magazine is a Black queer fashion lifestyle magazine, and it's been around for a few years. But when I first saw the 10th Magazine, I saw it online and I ordered it and I got it in the mail. I was flipping through it and I think I got halfway through it and I was crying because I had never seen a publication that really highlighted and featured beautiful Black queer people that looked like me, and that was really all about sharing their stories and these kind of nuances of the community. And I think what the 10th Magazine strives for is really showing how, the Black queer community is not a monolith. If we go all across the country, there's these different stories and narratives that need to be shared and heard. And so I emailed them. I was like, I need to work with you all. You don't know me. I'm like just starting this thing. Like, come, like I'm gonna be great. And it actually worked out. They responded back like, oh my God, your work is amazing. Let's meet, da 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 da. And so it worked out. And so since then, I've been working with the magazine as an art director and as a design director, really helping them craft these really specific narratives. And they've ranged from doing road trips across America. They ranged from really exploring like the idea of romanticism in kind of modern contemporary context. And our latest issue is talking about the prison industrial complex and really thinking about the intersections of the QT pop community, queer and trans people of color community, in prison and kind of prison reform and resources that are providing and these kind of some heartbreaking stories, some super inspiring stories about that. So yeah, and that issue is called Pen Pals. And so that will be coming out hopefully later this year. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here and talk about, you know, what it means to be a designer, how we all can use our skills as artists and as makers and as creators to really design, amplify, and elevate kind of narratives that maybe are overlooked.
Amazing, Jon. I love in your story. Yeah, let's hear it for Jon. I hear the RISD hustle continue to be on campus for you. So we're going to come back and go deeper into that. Lina, you and I had a chance to meet last year, and your story absolutely blew me away. You're doing such incredible work. Tell us how you got into what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, President Summerson. It's such an honor to be here today. I love coming back to RISD and coming to Providence whenever I can. 21 years ago was the first time I came to Providence. It was the first home away from home. I came here from Aleppo, Syria. I'm Syrian American, and it's a complicated story, but I came back here to America to live while my family lived in Syria, where my family goes back generations and generations in Aleppo, Syria. And when I came here to RISD, I tell people all the time that I feel like I came in as one person and left another. I know that a lot of times now in the business world, people talk about, you know, creativity and innovation and all these things, especially in the startup world, and brain plasticity, but I really felt that happened to me, and I'm sure it happened to many of you who had this RISD experience, that my brain was rewired by my experience here. I learned how to see the world differently, I learned how to think about the world differently, and I learned that I had limitless potential, which I didn't have when I first came here, that belief. Today, I run an organization that I founded, Haram Foundation. Karam means generosity in Arabic, and we are a foundation that is focused on building a better future for Syria. Our programs are focused on helping Syrian refugee youth build a better future for themselves, and they range from taking kids out of child labor and sending them back to school. We have an innovation program for Syrian refugee teens, and we also support students to get to higher education. And our programs are based in our Karam houses, which are community innovation hubs that exist in Turkey. Our first Karam house we built in Reyhanli, which is a town on the border of Syria and Turkey. It's in Turkey, and it's literally a few miles away from the Syrian border, a few miles away where war has been happening and intensifying for the past almost 9 years. And our second Karam house we built last year in Istanbul, which we're very excited about. And at Karam House, people come, families, kids, students come, and they have access to really everything. They have access to technology, mentorship, maker spaces, and we're really proud to deliver a curriculum that we developed with our partner, Nuvu Studio, which is an innovation school, you might know it, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, founded by my friend Saeed Arida, who is also Syrian. And so you can imagine that Syrian refugee teens, 14 to 18 boys and girls, come to this place after school and on their weekends, and they attend studio. They learn they have a problem they have to solve. They learn how to work in teams. They learn how to develop their ideas. They build their ideas. They draw it. They take it to the computer. They learn 3D design on their computers. You know, they learn on programs that I worked on at the BEB that were new at the time, and they learn how to make their stuff in the makerspace, and they use laser cutters and 3D printers. They're obsessed with a laser cutter, they love it. And they build things like new prosthetics for real life cases of amputees in the town. We're building a playground that's designed by our kids. They are building all sorts of things, and in that process, they are learning how to design, how to imagine, how to build their ideas, and in that space, which is a safe space for them, they're learning to belong and how to reimagine home again, which is why it's really important One of our students, her name is Batul. She's really special, really brilliant. She's 15 years old, and she wants to be an astronaut. She's obsessed with coming to America and working for NASA or SpaceX. Her idol is Elon Musk, so maybe, Joe, you can help us with that. She wrote an op-ed that it was 5 pages long when we had to edit it, and one whole page was dedicated to Elon Musk, and we're like, we're not gonna put that in the op-ed. But she loves it, and you have to imagine this girl is from Idlib, a place that you probably hear in the news that has been bombed by the Syrian regime for years and years, and intensively bombed in the past 7 months. And she's watching her village being bombed every day, but she's at Karam House imagining and reading about the black hole pictures and obsessing about the news on science, and she writes a column every month about science, and she wants to go to space. Another boy named Muhammad, I met him 4 years ago. He was 14 years old, and he was working at a gas station and had not gone to school for a few years. And we went to his family, and we asked his family, if we support you, will you send your kids back to school? And they said yes. And so he went to school, and he attended Karam House, and he's one of the kids that worked on the prosthetics project. And this fall, Muhammad is going to university to study mechanical engineering. And so it's a transformative experience. Batul describes Karam House as all of our dreams in one place. Yusuf, who attended both Karam houses because his family moved from Reyhanli to Istanbul, he says every Syrian child should have a Karam house near him or her, and I think that every child really needs a space like Karam House, a space that delivers RISD-esque programs. And so you might ask, in the context of the Syrian conflict, I mean, it's one of the largest humanitarian crises of our lifetime. Over 12 million people in the past 8 years have been displaced from their homes. 6 million internally, and 6 million people have become refugees. Over 500,000 people have lost their lives in this war. And every Syrian that I know, including myself, has lost family, friends, and home. And so in this context of this terrible war and this terrible conflict that's continuing on today, why do these things matter? Why does a place like Karam House matter? And the reason is that I believe that these kinds of programs matter to kids that we serve more than anybody else. Marginalized kids, kids that have fled conflict, have witnessed violence, that are experienced multiple displacements. They need these kinds of programs more than anybody else. They're learning how to lead. They're learning how to imagine. They're learning how to build something better than what we have today, and learning how to build a better world, not just for themselves and their communities, but really for all of us. And so this is why we are committed to doing this kind of work, and this is why I do this work. I never imagined 21 years ago, this fall, when I came here, that I would be doing this. I never imagined that I wouldn't be building buildings, but we would be building communities that have been broken by conflict. And I never imagined that I would coming to Providence right now and not being able to return to my home, Aleppo, ever. And having witnessed and experienced that loss, that was something that wasn't part of my plan when I came here. But I'm so happy that I was able to learn the way I learned how to see the world in a different place so that I could give this to so many other kids. And usually I don't speak to audiences like this one. This is an amazing audience. And so all of you, whether you came here or you're sending your kids here, all of you know what kind of investment this actually means to you, to learn how to see the world in a different way, to really go in and make an impact. And so I invite all of you to join Haram Foundation and join us in our vision to build a better world for Syrian refugee youth. And that will create ripple effects of change for all of us in the future, so that we see something different than what we're seeing in the news today, and we'll see people like Batul really getting to NASA, and people like Muhammad making inventions that help us all. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Lina. I could text Elon, but I think Richard Branson would be really upset that the student doesn't want to meet Richard Branson, who's also going to space. So maybe we'll have to sort that out. Maybe she'll get to meet both. Scott, sorry, over to you. I learned a fun fact about Scott earlier this morning. Scott, who's been to the Tillinghast Farm, there is the actual beach. Scott, you got married there. This is where you had your ceremony. Very interesting. Scott, you've been up to amazing things since you graduated from photography. Tell us where your story begins.
I'm happy to talk about where my story begins because I think, well, I wanted to talk about my brain. And my brain sees connections. It sees that everything is interconnected, and it has from the time I was a small kid. And that didn't always help me. I think elementary school it didn't help me, middle school it didn't help me, and the high school I went to it didn't help me. It didn't help me achieve academically in those settings. And when I came to RISD, and I started engaging in an artistic process, a design process, however you want to define it, where you start off with an idea, and then the expectation is that that idea will morph, that there will be built-in failure, that you will have more ideas to try to get over the blocks or barriers, and that what you end up with could be completely different than what you started with, but that is what is supposed to happen. That made sense to my brain. And it makes sense to everybody here, I'm sure. And when I heard Roseanne give her introductory remarks, it's just clear that that is the way that a lot of people here think. So when I came here, that was really reassuring. And it kind of reassured me that my brain was actually working well. And it was kind of a grounding that when I left here, that the approach that I naturally had to things was more grounded than I had previously thought. So that's interesting. If I want to start talking about One Gun Gone, I should also go back a little bit. So, and I will talk about what One Gun Gone is for those who don't know, which I'm assuming is just about everybody. But I used to teach in a juvenile detention facility, so this was jail, barbed wire, locked doors, the whole thing. When you're teaching in juvenile detention, when I was teaching in juvenile detention, I was teaching photography, it was challenging. It was a room not much bigger than this stage right here, week after week, month after month, year after year. I went once or twice a week, and I taught some of the same students for years. Typically a cinder block room. The room would occasionally change. Sometimes there was windows, sometimes there weren't. In juvenile detention, we couldn't photograph anybody's face. When students were released, they had a clean record that benefited the rest of their life, but you had your photography in a room, you couldn't photograph anybody's face. It was challenging. Some very creative ideas came out of that, which I still use to this day when I teach. But it was challenging. Students didn't want to be there. Something had gone really wrong in their lives. A lot of times it was stuff that they shouldn't have been incarcerated for, in my opinion. There was one person who, a student who was very, very angry. I didn't want him in my class. I thought he'd be a disruptor. Then he showed up in my class. To my delight and surprise, he would redirect what would occasionally be some chaotic blossoming in the classroom back into photography. And it became apparent that Miguel was very passionate about photography and that he was using photography as a tool for self-reflection in his own life. He was released from incarceration. We worked together for years in photography, teaching, and also learning about life together. He moved to California. Recently, he gave an artist talk in the Getty Museum, which was amazing. And so many years after, he texted me. When he first saw me in the training school, which is our state's juvenile detention facility, he didn't know why I was there. Why was I in such a negative place that had such a dehumanizing effect on people when I didn't have to be? And then he saw that I was making art. And when he saw the art being made, he realized I was keeping myself human in dehumanizing circumstances. I didn't know this about myself. And if you're lucky in life, sometimes people can show you yourself in a good way. Miguel did that for me. I'm forever in his debt for that. That's important because it's hard. Life can be hard. 4 of my students have passed away from gun violence. All told, 5 people in my life have passed away from gun violence. When this happens, you're never prepared for it, no matter how emotionally skilled you are, resilient, what have you. And then my students, when this would happen, they would be resigned. And it happens over there, it happens over there. I try to stay away from it. Some of my students saw things indirectly, some of them directly. Some of my students were perpetrators. It's complicated, it's a gray area, life isn't simple. I wanted to create a space where we could say to ourselves, this is not okay, we don't like this, we don't appreciate it. It's not just that it's over there. We don't like that it's over there. We don't like that it's over there. We don't like that we feel we need to carry a gun for protection. We don't like that. Art is the place to do that. When we make art, we can meditate. We can have a meditative process that allows a deeper kind of thinking than other ways that I know of. So I legally purchased a firearm without any students. I made a mold of it with an artist, went to RISD. And I paid her because artists deserve to be paid. And from that mold, my students and myself, and then later others, and I'll get to that, we made as much art as we could from that mold that spoke to our feelings about gun violence. In our group, we don't use text, so these are visual feelings about gun violence. These are pre-verbal feelings about gun violence. My students don't have much art in their lives, and so this is an opportunity to dive deeper into that making. I want to read briefly, I don't want to read much, but I want to read briefly about the One Gun Gone project because I don't want to leave anything out. Let's see if I can do this, and you know what? I'm not even going to do that. Okay. So the One Gun Gone project, we've taken, to date, this actually isn't true, but it started this way. To date, we've taken one gun off the street, we make art from that gun, and then we sell that art to fund a gun buyback that'll happen here in the city of Providence. My students are in their mid-teens to early 20s, and they're from communities most affected by gun violence here in the state of Rhode Island. Exposure is incredibly important for me to my students. So through this process, through this project, my students are introduced to people, places, careers, and institutions that they would probably not be in their day-to-day lives. We show our work in traditional and non-traditional spaces, traditional art-specific spaces like the RISD Museum. Woot, woot. We were invited here, and it was a fantastic day for us. We show our work in non-traditional spaces like the Brown School of Public Health and the Institute for Nonviolence. We are trying to reach audiences with our work. When we make the work, I know what the meaning is in that. When we show our work and our work invites discussion from new audiences, I know the value of that. When we have our gun buyback, I know the value of that. But it's symbolic. I know that it's symbolic. We get a lot of flack for that. It's like, you guys aren't doing anything. And I know that we are. But it's a good thing for my students to hear because they can start to grapple with that kind of rejection, that kind of negativity. Let's see, I just lost my train of thought, which, let's see. Our gun buyback will not solve the problem, but it's symbolism. Symbolism matters. We are surrounded by symbolism that we're aware of and we're not aware of. Symbolism can help us break out of challenges that are negative. It can also keep us in challenges that are negative. We want to create symbolism that talks about breaking out. When we have our gun buyback, we will potentially take 200 and 250 guns off the street. I know we can do it. We're about halfway there with the funds we need to raise towards this project from the sale of our artwork. When I say that we're creating symbolism, We're doing it ourselves when you make the artwork. We're doing it ourselves when you have the gallery show. We're doing it ourselves when you have the gun buyback. It's important for me that my students see a long trajectory of effort with challenges and successes, and that they understand each part of that. So when they leave this project, they can have in themselves the advocacy to do more of this and anything else that they want to do. And I think I'll end this part of my remarks by reading something that one of our students, Raul Velasquez, wrote. And he writes, "I've been thinking a lot about how hard it is to take one gun off the street and how easy it is to get a gun. It's like getting candy from a candy store. It makes me feel good to be a part of this project, and it's exciting to see the movement that we are making. In El Salvador, where I am from, gun violence is so common that you stop feeling it anymore. If we are successful in getting guns off the street here, it will feel good, even though it will really be like grains of sand to the number of guns out there. They will, however, be our grains of sand." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. I'm completely mesmerized right now. I feel like we just went around the world from the South to Brooklyn to the Middle East and back to Providence and Rhode Island again. I have a number of questions to dig in through some of the comments that you made, and we're going to open to questions to the audience. Somebody please keep me on time. I have no idea where we are in the programming, so just yell out when it's time to do Q&A in the audience. I'm going to dive in, though. I'm curious to learn about, like, was there a moment for you when you were students at RISD that sparked this, that you can point back to and say there was that turning point? You came in as one person, you left as another. What was the moment within your RISD experience? And can you dovetail that into advice for current students to help them find that moment for themselves?
So there was in freshman year, there was a 3D class. And I won't really talk about the assignment. That would be kind of boring, I suppose. But the entire idea was transformation. So there was a series of kind of random asks of the students. And in the end, there was supposed to be something that had completely transformed from its original materials. And if we know anything about life and challenge and experiences, it's that you can be a part of transformation, or transformation can happen to you. And I don't mean that in an aggressive way, and that can happen too. I mean it in a, we need to embrace change, and we need to understand that change is always happening. It never stops. And that if we can sharpen our flexibility in how we view life, approach life, make relationships, love each other, learn from each other, understand that we don't know everything, that we're always seeking answers, then we have a better chance for health and happiness. And that I get that from my art making. I am transforming things all the time, and then it, in some weird way, it helps me in my physical life too. So,
Lina.
So when I came here, I came as a graduate student, and I'd studied architecture in the University of Aleppo. And when I wanted to go to the school that was the most different from University of Aleppo, and I think I made the right choice. I only applied to one school, and I only applied to RISD. And when I got here, I came knowing I wanted to learn, but I also was kind of confident because I'm going into a graduate program as already an architect. So I thought that, yeah, I mean, I'm going to learn, but I felt like I didn't have so much to learn. And then I walk into the BEB studio that first day. I'll never forget this. And there was the 25-pound bag of clay. I don't know if they still do that. And the assignment was make a joint. And there was no teacher and nobody was there. We had like 3 hours to make a joint out of clay. And in my mind, I didn't know what to think, but I also realized I didn't even know how to think, because everything that I wanted to make needed some kind of solid material, you know, just that, like, I could only think of a joint in one way, but around me, all of the students were making unbelievable things. And I remember that I was mesmerized by the one student. Now, what I made was terrible and it was awful and I was so ashamed and embarrassed. But one student made, I'll never forget this. And I remember I went and I told my dad, I called my dad and I told him that this happened, and I was like crying because somebody had made an imprint of their hand, and then they said the joint was the connection between the imprint and their hand. And I thought that that was so unbelievable. Now I'm thinking, it wasn't that great. So, yeah. But that moment made me realize how much there was to see, and that, that first semester was very difficult for me because I kept wanting to quit because I felt that I just didn't know anything. And then with time, I realized, you just keep on going and you do it and you do it and you talk to more people, and that kind of opening up that space in the brain, which I'd never experienced, because in Syria you're taught that it's really about perfection and you only have one chance and you have one exam at the end of 12th grade and that will determine what you're going to study, and if you don't get into that university, then it's over. And so when we work with these refugee kids, it's really important to teach that lesson, because they're not like me. They're not the privileged person that was even able to come here. They've faced so much and have experienced so much, but they still have that idea of, if I'm out of school, then that's it, it's over for me. Or if I don't get into university this year, it's over. And so we teach them that thing that I learned at RISD, which is so important, and even to our staff, because our staff are all Syrian refugees as well, that it's not about the thing that you make, it is about that process. And it was a hard lesson to teach them because they didn't really believe it, but with time, they did. And so, I encourage everybody, all the students, that this is really the most important thing that I learned, is that even in our nonprofit, it's done in a very intuitive and a flexible way, that we're not like these big aid agencies and just, becoming this thing that we know what we're doing all the time. We have to be open to the fact that things change and people change, and we need to change our programs to reflect that, not the opposite. So one of the projects that the kids had last year was to build a drone. They wanted a drone so that they could do their videos, and then we said, no, we're not going to buy a drone. You have to build your own drone. And so they started building it, and they kept on failing. They would make these videos, and they would fly a little bit, and then they would crash. And when I started seeing these short videos, they would send me on WhatsApp, and when I'd hear the kids laughing, that's when I knew that we'd made it, because they were failing and laughing about it, because they knew it wasn't about that. It was about that they were trying, and each time it was flying a little bit longer and longer, and that's how success happens. And so I've definitely showed them Brian's talk, and I've shown them so many things about, from the startup world, about that failure is the way to success, and that was something very difficult for them to learn, but I think it's one of the most important things.
Wow, you really brought something straight from the studios to the students out there. Jon, your advice to students on how they might find this moment for themselves while on campus?
I was very lucky because I had Jan Baker as a professor in the graphic design department who passed away a few years ago. And I think when you have a professor that actually looks at you and believes in you and makes you go out of your comfort zone, those things I think can transform you. And so with Jan Baker, she really encouraged me to write. She really encouraged me to get my personal narrative on paper. She really encouraged me to not be afraid to share my story and to really figure out all of these questions I was asking myself. And the solution was to write. The solution was to get it out of my mind and to process it and all of that. And so I would just say, I feel like more RISD students should probably be writing, I think that has really transformed my process and really has allowed me to make and think about the work that I'm doing now. And I think it's like with amazing RISD professors that do encourage, that process, that's a little bit different than I think others.
Let's see. So how are we going to do questions? Okay, so let's go to questions to the audience. If you have questions, Chris, where should they go? All right, we're running mics. If you have a question, hold your hand up high. We will get the mic to you. We've got a couple here on the 3rd row and 5th row.
Yeah, hi. Fred Fassett, class of 69, friend of Joe's. Something I still say every day in my professional life is that my RISD experience did so much to help me get where I am and make things work. So just be curious to hear what you folks think in that regard.
I think I think the flexibility of thinking and the flexibility of thought and the flexibility of problem solving were things that were reaffirmed here, and then it helped me apply that to all kinds of other different challenges. And so the developing and the reaffirmation of that when I was here has just followed me.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that I would say is always true about RISD is like the intensity of work and the intensity of making and really, again, like going out of your comfort zone, because maybe you have to make like literally 100 things. And I think that type of process, I think, is really fun because it gets you out of yourself. It gets you out of your body. It gets you out of your mind. And it really just allows you to focus on the task at hand. And I think there are a lot of professors like Matt Monk who would have these very quick, 4-hour things where we have to make something from scratch with nothing. Those type of assignments that has this kind of rigorous intensity really does allow you to think your feet and be fast and come up with new ideas and really not, second guess yourself. And I would say that is something that is very, that was very helpful that I learned here.
I agree. The work ethic is definitely something huge. You learn how to work really, really hard, and you also learn that you craft the thing that you want, so you can keep on trying to make it better. And that, the process of learning is really, really important. And I think that also the community that you build with your friends and you see what they're doing, and constantly, I'm most inspired by my friends who were with me at RISD and seeing what they're making and pushing your thoughts even broader and in new spaces.
Certainly, I think a common theme here is that RISD creates the feeling of entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be in the formal sense of starting a company, but it means certainly charting your own path, I think, as we've seen here. Next question in the audience. We have a hand in the very back row, and there's one right here. Let's go here and then in the back.
Hello. Hello. There we go. Okay, good. Talk right into it. Dorothy Mizzou, also class of 69, environmental design, and then on to 70 architecture. Questions primarily for Joe, and I'm one of the people staying at an Airbnb. Thank you very much. But also, I just want to highlight or point out that there's a shadow side to Airbnb, which is, I'm sure, any brilliant, wonderful idea that's successful has that. I currently live in Toronto, where there's quite a shortage of affordable housing. It's quite a crisis for people. And the city's in the process of developing some kind of legislation so that Airbnbs are not owned by absentee landlords who are just buying up properties and filling them short-term rentals. And I just wondered if Airbnb is sort of doing anything about that or concerned about it, or my own, if you will, social enterprise. I'm currently developing a website for people, primarily older adults who are living in their own home with spare bedrooms, to help alleviate the 5 million spare bedrooms there are in Ontario, which is worth 24 years worth of affordable housing construction. Just wondered if you could comment on that, Joe.
I'd be happy to. First of all, thank you for doing the organization that you are working on. So I guess the quick big picture is that we have a belief, we use this term, this idea of a 21st century company, just in contrast to maybe how companies operated in the 20th century, which I would relate back to the quote from the Economist in 1972, of that the social purpose of a company is to increase shareholder profit. And I feel like that quote basically ran companies since 1972 or 73 when it came out. I feel like in 2019, people are expecting something different than that. And we certainly believe that there's more than just shareholder profit. We actually see it as companies need to account for all stakeholders. Stakeholders in our case include our hosts, our guests, our employees, our investors, and the communities in which we operate in. So we have a major initiative going on right now inside the company We call it the 21st Century Company Initiative, where we'll be publishing these kinds of principles and how they will help us operate as a company going forward. We have a strong belief that companies going forward will have to be good for society, and it goes way beyond us. To pick any industry, it could be finance, it could be energy, it could be tech, it doesn't matter. But we really think that customers, communities, and even governments will demand that companies are good for society. So we do work very closely with cities on this topic. We do look into the data to make sure that the claims are actually true. In some cases they're not. But in any case, we do work with cities to address those issues. Okay, hand in the back row.
Hi, Grace John, class of 2009, and also an awardee from last night.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, I guess, to echo this morning, we talked about sustainability, social impact, and the pursuit of new knowledge for RISD. And most of the work that you guys are doing, I think, includes social impact. So how do you guys measure impact for yourselves and for the work you are doing is something I'd like to ask.
I think that's a really good question. I think for Codify Art, for example, we're based in Brooklyn, and I think the challenge when we first moved to New York, I think like anyone who moves to New York, is trying to find your community, find who the people are that you love, that you look up to, that you want to be inspired by. And I think that was our original challenge. And I think now that we've been doing Codify for about 4 or 5 years, we know that we've worked with like 500, 600 artists in New York, which we think is amazing. We've like raised money and are offering kind of grants and scholarships and funds for artists, and we've done so. Like, I think for us, it's like knowing that we're actually touching so many specific people, and that there is like, I don't know, like there was 0 people that we knew, and now I know 500 more people, you know. And I feel like that is such a great way to measure impact, and then also just seeing how people take the work that we're doing and then bring it into their own communities or take it wherever, you know. I think that is one way when you're seeing like your message be carried away from you and to other people. I think that's one way that we also measure impact. I don't know.
And measuring impact in our work is really important, and it's really hard because it's hard to measure innovation or measure the kinds of changes that are happening with the students that we work with. And one of the things that we do is we look at different things that socially that they're capable of doing. A lot of the students that come, everybody has suffered from extreme trauma. So sometimes students come and they sit in a group of their class and they can't even stand up and say their own name in front of everybody. They're so withdrawn and don't have any confidence. And what we've seen, one of the biggest changes that happen, or the quickest changes, within a couple of weeks, they're able to stand up and talk about their idea in front of their friends. And then they're able to talk with different groups and bigger groups of people and actually communicate. We do virtual exchange programs with kids in the US, high schools, and they're capable of holding their own and explaining their idea. But it's also very hard to measure impact in this way because it's very different from traditional aid models where you can say we're delivering, you know, primary education to 100,000 kids, but when you really dig into these models, they're not really creating any kind of long-term change. Or when people are saying, oh, we're delivering, you know, food to everybody, but you realize that they're not really reaching the people that actually need this the most, and there's a lot of waste in these kinds of models. So what we compete against in the aid world is very, very difficult because the numbers that we are affecting are small compared to the crisis. And but we do have a goal to keep ourselves motivated in the way of numbers, even though it's small in the context of the crisis, which is to build 10,000 leaders by 2028. It was a 10-year goal. And right now, throughout all of our programs, we have over 2,000 kids on the pipeline to leadership. And so our idea is if we get to this number, 10,000, and they're going to be able to affect more people around them in these communities, we can't help but know that there will be major impact happening in these communities at the same time that this war is continuing and we're not seeing any end in sight. So we always feel like we're fighting this battle with this type of education, with this type of intervention, in smaller numbers but in much deeper impact?
So I think about this a lot, and the One Gun Gone project has been a project since 2015. It became a nonprofit about 2.5 months ago, and in the process of that, I am very interested in working with people with different skill sets than myself, than I was trained in, working with educators to develop surveys, things of that nature, to actually start trying to capture some aspect of impact with the young people, and for that matter, other people that we work with. So I want to do that so I can talk about things from a, I suppose, data point of view as opposed to anecdotal. But, you know, anecdotally, my gosh, I think there's a lot of impact you can see. When you work with young people for a long period of time, you can see what I call personhood develop. And, you know, if somebody leaves the program with a better sense of personhood, that is huge. And it happens, and I see it, and I've seen it for a long time, and it takes time, and it takes being there, and it takes forming relationships with people. And there's no shortcut to that. That is what it takes. But I also think there's another kind of impact that I see and I'm very passionate about, and it's this. Through the work that I've done, you know, being on stage is not something I do every day, so I'm not necessarily comfortable up here, but I feel myself comfortable in a lot of environments. I feel myself comfortable in a museum. I feel myself comfortable on this campus. And then I also feel myself comfortable in a classroom at the Rhode Island Training School. So I'm one of these strange people that I'm in a lot of different spaces. And I tend to be in a lot of different spaces that a lot of other people that were born where I was born, that had my experiences, don't have. And it's a gift to me, so that's a good thing. But what I see is people, you know, there's a RISD professor here, Dean Snyder, a sculpture professor, and he's participated in the One Gun Gone project, you know, and he said, I would love to work with your students, but, you know, if Dean just walked into a local high school and said, hey guys, I have this great thing to offer, and I want to work with you, sign up, he would get 0. And it's because he doesn't have a relationship. The students don't even know what he's offering. And because of that, One Gun Gone is serving as a bridge. So he can work with my students, and my students can work with him, and it's a win, and it's awesome, and it's amazing. And you know, similar things happened with Nafis White, who's a fantastic artist who recently graduated from RISD. So the students got to meet her, hear her life story, see a studio visit, same with Dean. And the same thing happened with Jordan Seabury, who's a fantastic painter who graduated from RISD, and he also works in violence prevention from a policy level here in the city of Providence through the Institute for Nonviolence. So my students got to meet him. And Nafis and Jordan are people of color, so my students got to see, and my students are people of color, so my students got to see adult artists working in just tremendous ways, meeting them, understanding what they do. So that is impact. So initially I thought, oh, my students are going to get so much out of working with these adult artists, but I started to realize the artists get something out of working with them too. And so I want to work towards being able to articulate that better from a numbers point of view, and I'm trying to collaborate with folks to get systems to do that better.
Brilliant answers. I'd answer that, but I have a closing question that I want to end with, which is that in this room we have trustees, we have alumni, parents, students, faculty, administration. What is one thing that we can do to help you? One thing that we in this room and the RISD community at large can do to help you? Go.
I'll go. The most important thing that this community can do is actually be aware of the crisis in Syria. I know that Syria is back in the news this week, and I know that it's very complicated and it's very confusing. It's another geopolitical conflict and moves that really, what you see in the media leaves out the most important piece, is that many, many, many people, thousands of people are in the middle of this, and they are the victims of this conflict. And so the people left behind are the families, the moms, the kids. And so please be aware. Please know that we're doing all we can to support Syrian kids, regardless of their ethnicity or their religion. Everybody is welcome at our Karam houses. We have programs. We are delivering the RISD experience for free to the most vulnerable communities in the world. And so this is a really important investment to make. And we also have a very amazing program that's the perfect fit for this crowd, which is visiting mentors. We open it up every single year, and you or somebody you know can come and volunteer one week of your time. We do this once a year, but you can volunteer 1 week of your time to run a workshop, a studio, in really whatever thing that you want, because we love to have people from all around the world come and spend time with Syrian refugee kids, because they feel that they've been abandoned by the world. And we've done things from Greek philosophy, art, photography, digital photography, debate club, culinary arts, as long as you have the passion, which I know this group does, and you want to give a week of your time, you can come to Istanbul or Reyhanli and volunteer and see how it's like, and really give a lot to the community. So,
Brilliant. Jon, one thing we can do to help you.
One thing you can do to help me. Well, I imagine that everyone knows that the Supreme Court just saw 3 cases by LGBTQ people that are happening that's about, literally human rights. And I think there is a part about being aware and also being an advocate, right? Being an ally, I think, is really important. For me personally, you can go to codifyart.com/donate and support us financially to really help us build out these amazing workshops that we're doing over the next 6 months with all these various organizations. And also just share art, share art. And we already do that, so I love it.
All right. Scott, one thing we can do to help you.
One thing is always tough for me, but I will say, I guess if I could pile on what you suggestion you made, onegungone.com. We're raising money for a gun buyback. That would help. But outside of that, when I first came to RISD, the idea of working outside of RISD was it didn't seem like there were no systems in place to do that. And diversity was much less then than it is now. And I just want to see people think about, things don't happen on their own. RISD is putting effort into creating a more diverse student body and diversity in general. I would love to see that continue. I love the work that RISD Project Open Door does with young people in that way. I'm such a huge fan of that program. And then think about, Roseanne was saying in her opening remarks, President Summerson, thinking about the big things that we have happening, which I'm not going to articulate right now, but we need to be thinking of our own practices, but we need to think about reaching out into the world. The more we can do that, the more, again, health and happiness, but it comes from those kinds of practices. And we need to think globally. So I would just encourage those kinds of outreach to continue.
Amazing. Well, in summary, Jon, you're showing us how to give a voice to those who need one the most. Lina, you've shown us that you're building things that are actually more important than the buildings themselves. And Scott, you showed us how art is a meditation to change communities, and that your brain functions just perfectly fine. And I think the commonality is that you're all using RISD's education to do good in the world and touch people's lives far beyond that. So I hope everybody enjoyed the panel, enjoy the rest of the activities today. Let's hear it for our panelists.